Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel. We try to fill you in and tune you in to turn you on to great theories of everything, ancient and modern, all-encompassing theories, grand unified theories, cosmologies, that usually are very obscure, and they are threatening to fall onto the trash heap of history. So I'm trying to keep them alive for a little bit longer. Hopefully maybe somebody sees these videos and are in the position to do something about it. And today is our 93rd video that we've done on the book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha from Dr. Daniel Ingram. And he first put out this book, I think, in the late 90s, and this second edition, I believe, is from 2017. And he spent a lot of time over in monasteries in the Far East doing meditation retreats, meditating 18 to 20 hours a day in some cases for many, many days at a time. And he's had the chance to pick the brains of many so-called masters over there, and has come back and put it all into one place in English, modern English, no less. And this is our opportunity to try to really hone in on the core teachings of the Buddha. Just like basically all the other religions, there's some core teachings that can be very useful if you can shuck off all the surface stuff, the ritual and the marketing, the power plays, the politics. And in particular, in Buddhism, the focus is on meditation. So Ingram focuses on two kinds of meditation and how to do them effectively and what happens as you do them. You cycle through either stages or states of consciousness, so-called, and Ingram provides you with those maps, the maps of the stages as they progress, and as you, in the case of insight meditation, as you become enlightened slowly but surely. We are toward the end of this book, and we still got a week or two to go, but we are in the kind of autobiographical section where he talks about his own experiences meditating and dealing with the non-meditation hours when you are, going up into very high rarefied states. Sometimes it's very difficult to re-assimilate into this world that is unjust at best. And we're talking about we appear to be talking about psychological issues. I know that he does a section here on Freud. I guess this is probably what it is. This section is called crazy with a question mark. Okay, so I believe that yeah, okay, right here. I would suggest care and caution in dealing with all the visions and other unusual experiences that might arise in practice. The primary danger is taking them too seriously and thus assuming they are more important than they really are. It may be a good idea to leave them until very late in our practice unless we have someone around to guide us through their skillful use, or unless we are quite balanced and have been for a significant amount of time and have a good sense of humor about them. He's talking about the psychic powers here. If not, they can very easily magnify our less desirable aspects and only serve as long psychedelic and manipulative tunnels to nowhere or to destruction. I remember a letter from a friend who was on a long retreat in Burma and was supposed to be doing insight practices but had slipped into playing with these sorts of experiences. I think I've already gone through this here. Yeah, okay, here we go. Sorry about that. As an aside, please do not assume that meditation will allow you to come off your meds if you are on meds for something like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. It is not that gentle meditation can help some people with mental illness, as it can, but it can also greatly increase mental instability at times. So keep whoever helps you manage your illness in the loop about what is going on with you if you get into meditation, and be honest with them about what you are experiencing. On the other end of that hypothetical spectrum, we have more benign phenomena, such as just seeing a vision of some flowers or hearing a choir of angelic beings while meditating and without other complexities issuing from these experiences. Conceptual frameworks that use that simple, harmless, and possibly beautiful experience as justification to add pathological labels, such as psychosis or hallucinations, would also be doing harm where none needed to occur. Plenty of meditation experiences are just meditation experiences, the byproducts of strong concentration and nothing more. They do no damage, cause no trouble, impair no function, and so require no pathologizing label, intervention, or undue negative reaction. And then we have the large middle region of the spectrum where it gets complicated. Many people that others would consider totally nuts live very functional lives. They heal with their hands, predict the future, see ghosts, talk to fairies, perform compassionate exorcisms, and manipulate their chi. They also hold down normal jobs, pay their bills, have healthy relationships, and raise their children just fine. In short, they are solid citizens, true mensches, to use the Yiddish. The vegetables they grow by following the instructions of the garden gnomes turn out beautifully. Some people believe that Earth is about 6,000 years old and was created in 6 days by a divine being, and they do so while maintaining excellent practices as physicians, thus contributing valuable service to their communities. Unusual suffering is not occurring due to their odd paradigms and magical experiences. They may have been raised that way, and it is totally normal to them, just how life is. And so it causes them no obvious difficulties, and instead may enhance their lives. You might think it is weird, but it is not impairing their functioning in the world. On the darker end of things, there are people who have a much easier time having some level of functionality when their internal experience is challenging, meaning specifically that their inner world is chaotic, irrational, and filled with powerful, volatile, frightening, and confusing experiences that are outside the previous scope of things they learned to handle well. They work their jobs, interact with friends and family members, and nobody can tell when those experiences are happening. Then there are those who, in the face of those same powerful experiences might manifest extremely harmful actions and reactions, such as abject panic and violent behavior. Those who can stay at a sensate level and just notice each sensation happening rather than reactively freaking out are going to do a lot better in general. Those who also have supportive and knowledgeable people with whom they can discuss what they are experiencing, along with the language and conceptual framework to discuss it straightforwardly, are also likely to do a lot better. One of the basic tests of whether people should pursue intensive practice is the degree to which they fall into one of these more functional categories with respect to managing difficult experiences. This is the formal psychological concept of ego strength, showing its head again. Ego strength is essential for facing and processing these experiences well, or at the very least for keeping the actions we do with our body, speech, and mind from causing damage to anyone or anything. In short, for keeping our shit together. On another tangent, both mental illness and insight can and often do coexist. I have some very skilled meditation friends who have at times suffered from some significant mental illnesses. Many people get into meditation to deal with their own internal complexities. Further, mental illness may arise that might appear unrelated to our meditation practice. People often start meditating in their 20s or 30s, which is also a common time for initial manic episodes and, in some, the development of schizophrenia. Depression and anxiety, some of which may result from authentic natural insight into the first noble truth of suffering, are also common reasons for people to start meditating. Personality disorders are also quite common across all groups of people, including meditators, and this includes the relatively troublesome cluster B diagnoses from the DSM-5 of the borderline antisocial, narcissistic, and histrionic personality disorders. As mentioned before, these are diagnoses you should read up on and understand well if you are going to teach meditation or interact with the public at all, particularly if you think you fall into one of these diagnostic categories. Meditation in high doses can produce intense experiences and rapid changes that can exacerbate these conditions. Being able to adopt a paradigm that embraces both the theory regarding the side effects of meditation and the standard psychological theory can be very useful, as it is often not that clear exactly where one ends and the other begins. We certainly shouldn't blame every negative psychological difficulty that happens to meditators on either mental illness or meditation, but instead do our best to sort out the features of these conditions with those who are well informed about both. In the meantime, if experiences get too wild for you to handle, the first general principle is to stop meditating. This also involves a paradigm shift for many, as they may believe that persevering in meditation at all costs is the best option to help make them saner. This is not always the case. Recall the advice we saw with the progress of insight and the dark night and its potential side effects. Get grounded, do some exercise or other physical activity like gardening or hiking. Do routine distracting tasks. Watch movies whose content won't exacerbate your condition. Eat heavy foods and play sports, but perhaps avoid high-intensity video games. Also, make heartfelt, formal, clearly verbalized resolutions that the problematic experiences stop immediately and that ordinary reality be restored. A good example being, I formally resolve that I will not experience or use these powers until I formally resolve otherwise. Or, may these destabilizing experiences stop, and may stability and a high level of normal function return immediately. Feel it, mean it, believe this will work. If it doesn't work the first time, say it again and repeat as necessary. Those all greatly increase the chances that this will work. You might have spent hours or days getting yourself into this mess through strong practice, so you might have to spend hours or days working hard to shut it down. Apply at least the same degree of diligence to this breaking work as you did to the work of acceleration. It is amazing the degree to which we can be so fascinated by the freaky stuff that we lack the perspective to step back and just call a halt to the madness, as it were. Don't get sucked into that trap. It is also possible to get so identified with the far-out experiences, even though those that are causing problems, that we cling to them with morbid curiosity. Recognize this immediately if it happens and put a stop to it. Notice that sometimes the powers seem to completely preclude the possibility of practicing insight in relation to them, that is, noting their three characteristics throughout. When we can remember to do that, and if we have the skill set shredding the experiences of the powers with consistent, sustained, and analytical insight practice, rapidly cause those sensations to scatter like confetti and break up unhealthy fascination. The insight method of shredding them with rapid-fire investigation was my primary strategy for dealing with the powers for my initial 2 years or so, until I got much more established in my practice and became more comfortable and competent in dealing with unusual experiences. Sometimes it is simply best to put your mental foot down and just say no. At times there can be subconscious manifestations of our psychological issues that come up in a magical meditative form. Often we are not very mature in relating our deeper issues when they come up this way. Waxing Western psychological again, read up on the nature and the mature and immature coping mechanisms. Just type mature and immature coping mechanisms into any internet search engine. Apply the mature coping mechanisms to the powers in your practice and life in general, and you will do better. The next essential piece of advice for those having a hard time, as already mentioned, and which cannot be overstated, is to immediately speak with people who know about both mental illness and meditation. If you can't find those with that dual competence in your area, as they are hard to find at this time of writing, then start with those who know about mental illness and how to treat it. And don't try to go it alone. In my ideal world, one day we will be able to find those with dual competence easily, as the necessary theory and training will be widely available through the standard healthcare and educational channels. In fact, as meditation is spreading seemingly everywhere, this had better happen fast, or there will be even more trouble in the meditation world than there already is. When relating your experience to those who can provide stabilizing care, try to avoid Dharma terminology and state labels, because the chances that a garden variety mainstream mental health provider will know such terms is nearly zero at this point. They will know all about how to stabilize psychosis and bipolar-like manifestations. So just stick to the ordinary non-dharmic terms for the disturbing symptoms, and they will likely find them less confusing and alienating. That brings me to the question of community support and the powers. If you are going to explore the powers, I highly recommend that you have people to talk with about them, and then you set this up ahead of time. As noted in the foreword and warning, becoming an accomplished practitioner of the powers can be very alienating. Reasons for this alienation include the time commitment generally required, the likely lack of available people in your area who will be able to understand what you're talking about, unless you have training in one of the few communities that is well versed in them, and the paradigm divergence that can occur as your experience becomes vastly different from that of those around you. All these can tempt us to be lone wanderers in strange lands. I highly recommend that you not be. Instead, reach out and cultivate friends who are good at these things and can serve as sounding boards for your practice, particularly regarding the powers. Ideally, these supportive friends will, one, be sufficiently accomplished so that they have a basis of experience to be able to understand whatever you're going through. Two, have a sufficiently similar vocabulary and conceptual background to yours to be able to understand what you're talking about. Three, be sufficiently versed in the dangers of practice to be able to identify when you are getting into trouble. Four, be sufficiently stable, secure, kind, ethical, and psychologically mature so that they are not intimidated by or in competition with your practice, prone to the other bad behavior, or prone to giving bad advice or freaking out when you tell them about whatever you are going through. 5, be blessed with that precious spirit of co-adventuring comrades rather than teacher versus student, rival versus rival, or other unhealthy conception of the relationship between you. 6, keep things down to earth, practical and real wherever possible. 7, have a good sense of humor and an ability to roll with things, maintain perspective, and to take things in stride. And 7, or maybe this is 8, know when to refer you to someone with more skill or capabilities than they have, such as inpatient psychiatric facilities or a more senior Dharma center, when the situation is beyond their ability to handle. Just as we who work in emergency departments know how to stabilize and then transfer to a higher level of specialized care those patients who have illnesses that are beyond our capabilities to handle in our facility, just so meditation teachers should know how to recognize when people get into territory beyond their knowledge and competence and to whom they should refer the practitioner in question. If you can cultivate friends like these, it will be of immense benefit to you and to them, and your practice will likely be much stronger. And if you get into trouble, you are much more likely to do well if you have good support and sane reference points than if you don't. This applies to all aspects of practice, not just the powers, but as the powers are the aspect of practice that is most prone to causing problems, it applies most of all to them. Even better, if you can be this sort of friend to others, this is true generosity, true and useful support, and to the degree that you are able to do this, you will be doing true good in the world. It is the ideal to which I myself aspire. Unfortunately, the more explicitly magical communities tend to be the worst communities in terms of competition, petty power bullshit, posturing, alpha person domination, manipulation, and the like, with other forms of meditation communities being a close second. That doesn't mean that this trend needs to continue, and in general it means that the people you are around probably don't have that strong a practice. If they did, they would be just fine and they wouldn't likely be so psychologically immature. In that same vein, people can get really into the powers and really into themselves for having them, as I know well from my own practice and the practice of plenty of my co-adventurers, though people with very strong morality and insight are less prone to this sort of finely honed stupidity. Still, the powers are extremely seductive, and seduction is both hard to recognize and to insight your way through. Stories abound of gurus who were all into whatever powers they thought they had. It is a potential source of profound arrogance, role abuse, and power tripping, as well as the staggering crashes and scandals that tend to follow. Avoid these ways of relating to the powers like the plague. Instead, rank strong morality as among the greatest of the powers, second only to the wise and liberating clear perception of sensate reality. If you find some of the less skillful reactions to the powers arising in you, Acknowledge them, note them, and compensate for them with whatever skillful attempts at humility, empathy, and morality you can muster until you get over yourself. Do basic insight practices on the sensations that make up those feelings and reactions. The classic argument that the powers will help you sell good dharma, and get people attracted to meditation and the like is an exceedingly slippery slope, and good people fall right off that cliff all the time, whereas the psychopaths and narcissists with powers may have already been there waiting at the bottom. The powers as advertising argument was explicitly refuted by the Buddha, at least when he wasn't using the powers to advertise Buddhism. Playing around with powers can also bring up really screwed up stuff from our subconscious that we are just not ready or able to handle skillfully, causing city bleed through into our lives that can range from simply unhelpful all the way to extremely destructive. These powers-fueled issues can sometimes be very hard to integrate. I have spent days pondering some of my stranger experiences, with that contemplation significantly distracting me from the important ordinary tasks I needed to be paying attention to, only to realize days later that I had come to no useful conclusion about what the experience meant, why it happened, or whether it led to anything useful for myself or others. When exploring any meditative technology, there is no free lunch. You always end up being forced to face some further challenge having to do with personal or spiritual growth, either then or shortly thereafter. There doesn't seem to be any getting around this. Further, if you have enough of these experiences, you will likely come across a number whose causes, meanings, and practical implications stubbornly defy attempts to understand them at a conceptual level that can then be integrated behaviorally. Back on a positive note, plenty of people get into the powers and do okay for a while. They handle them well, relate to them well, and get many insights out of them. They can be loads of fun with the right attitude and totally fascinating in a good way, encouraging us to explore our psyches, hearts, and minds in truly remarkable ways, and to use those remarkable talents to do good. All right, that's the end of the chapter. The next chapter, chapter 62, is called Those Damn Fairies. Beyond questions of mental illness mixed with meditation experiences, problems can arise when people who are not into the powers start having them, such as when people who are not into fairies start seeing the pesky things, or start having whatever unusual experiences for which they were not prepared and have an active or subconscious prejudice against. You thought of yourself as an ordinary person in an ordinary world, a sane and predictable world, a non-magical world, a material world, a rational world, a world that behaved as you thought it did, according to laws you thought were unchanging. You were a muggle through and through. You have a specific tribal identity that requires you to have a fixed worldview that precludes some or all of these experiences. Suddenly, your experiential reality seems to contradict that entirely. For example, if you think there are no magical effects possible, and suddenly you are seeing chakras and seem to know odd things about people that you couldn't possibly know, as it is not so uncommon in the stage of the arising and passing away. You saw the room you are meditating in through closed eyelids, something you thought was impossible. Many variations on this basic theme are possible. You think of yourself as a Buddhist, and suddenly a powerful vision of Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary appears to you, flooding your body with light and love. You think of yourself as a strictly atheistic scientific materialist, and suddenly you have a series of extremely compelling experiences that give you the profound impression that you can manipulate people's moods just using your mind and that in a past life you were a celestial goddess. In short, you have a paradigm experience collision, and perhaps more to the point, an identity experience collision. We tend to be pretty invested in the way we relate to all sorts of experiences. With the powers being high on the list of things people tend to be rigid about, plenty of us cling tightly to our sense of reality despite all the evidence to the contrary. I've spent a lot of time talking with people about their various beliefs, and it is amazing how complex and nuanced people's beliefs are about things they may not even initially admit to believing in. These conversations can be a lot of fun if you set them up well, and people are in the right mood and context to have them. If you keep inquiring deeper, you will find that people who initially present as being relatively simple paradigmatically are revealed to be much more complex and nuanced than either of you even imagined. For example, I know people who believe in God and ghosts, but don't believe in any other magical creatures. I know of people who, while believing in and relying on psychics, also identify as atheists. I know some people who will tell you that all this stuff about magic is clearly delusional, but on a more careful questioning believes that they have accurately predicted the future a few times, can cast dark energy at people to harm them if they are not careful, still actively regrets a specific time that they did that decades ago, and is sure that we retain somewhere within us the collective memories of all our ancestors. Okay, I'm going to stop right there, and we'll take over tomorrow where we are. And thanks for tuning in today.